Hey, welcome to the Female Founder World podcast. I'm Jasmine. I host the show, and I don't know, you see me in the group chat for Female Founder World. I'm at all of the events. I am doing all things Female Founder World. But today's guest is somebody that I have been trying to rope into this community for a really long time. She's amazing. Her name's Jane Liu. She's the founder of a 9-figure fashion business out of Australia called Showpo. She also has a business course. She has a podcast. She is a judge on the first season of Shark Tank Australia, which is coming out pretty soon. She has kids, she has a lot going on. So it took a while to line up this interview, but we finally got there, and truly it did not disappoint. I focus a lot on launch marketing, which is going to be the theme over the next few weeks on the podcast. We are focusing on launch strategies, on how people get things off the ground, and not just new businesses, but how they're thinking about launching new products. So if you're somebody who's already got an existing business and you want to grow it and build out new offerings to your product line, this is going to be relevant to you as well. So we talk about her launch process, how she launched the business and got traction, but then also how they launch collections now as a massive company, how she thinks about influencers and UGC. It's a great conversation. But the best thing about Jane's founder story, which we talk a bit about, but I just want to flag right here, is how she got started. It's just the wildest, I don't know. It's the story that I've heard it over and over again because I've been following her story. And so I feel like maybe we skimmed over it a little bit in the episode. So I want to give you the story now. Basically, Jane was raised pretty conservatively. Her parents wanted her to have a steady full-time job, that real immigrant mindset. And she thought that that's what she wanted to. She worked for a big accounting firm. And then one day, her and somebody else started a business. It was this pop-up fashion store. She quit her job and went all in on this business idea, and didn't tell her parents because, like we said, conservative, they wouldn't have maybe understood at the time. She was nervous about what they would have thought. And so she got dressed every day, in a suit. She lived with her parents. So she got on the bus with her mom to go into the city, pretended she was going to work, but then would go to coffee shops and the library and work on this fashion startup. Anyway, the pop-up store concept failed. Her and her business partner separated, and she couldn't get another job because it was in the middle of the GFC. And so she decided to start another business. It became Showpo. It was a hit. And it is just the most inspiring story about how she got this off the ground and continued to grow it. Before we jump into the show, I have a quick recommendation for you. It is another podcast. It's by Dolma Alton, and the show is called Due Diligence. It is for entrepreneurs, founders, anyone in the tech and entrepreneurship space. Dolma is pretty big on TikTok. That's where I discovered her. And she recently released this pod where she dives really deep into brand building, founder stories, and the startup space. It's a little bit more tech focused than our show, but if you're interested in business in general, I think you're going to love it. Link in the show notes if you want to check out Due Diligence by Dolma Alton. Okay, let's get into the episode.
You are now entering Female Founder World with your host, Jasmine Garnsworthy.
Jane, welcome to Female Founder World. I'm so excited to have you on the show. This is a long time coming.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited too.
Okay, so I want to start by giving people a bit of an understanding. You have built a 9-figure retailer. You are going to be a judge on the first season of Shark Tank in Australia. You just launched a podcast. You have a lot of things going on, but we're going to spend most of this conversation talking about Showpo and how you built your fashion business. I love your startup story. I feel like it is one of the most funny, relatable, wild kind of startup stories. You're working finance, you lied to your parents, and it just all happened to work out. But in the early days, it didn't feel like that. Talk me through what you were doing in the beginning and how you got this all off the ground.
Oh my God, we're going way back. So this is now 13 years ago. Oh, sorry. This is now 13 years ago when I used to work in accounting at a Big Four accounting firm, and I just absolutely hated it. And so I actually thought I actually quit my job to start another business, and it was running pop-up stores. And I just didn't care what the business model was. I was just so excited to start a business. I was just, trying to chase the dream. And then, so I quit my job, but then my business partner screwed me over, and she left me high and dry and said that we were going to close the business down. So then all of a sudden I was now unemployed. I had a failed business. I was in debt from the business and like from quitting my job, from uni, a bunch of things. So I was in $60,000 of debt. And then, and then I was like, and it was in the middle of the global financial crisis, so I couldn't get another job. So my only option was to start another business. So I started Showpo by default. So because I had quit my first business, I couldn't bring myself to tell my parents that I had done that because we kind of immigrated from China. So my parents would give me the chance of a better future, and they wanted me to, go to a good school, uni, get a great job. And so all of a sudden to tell them that I've just thrown it all away to sell clothes online, which is just like...
Also, people weren't selling clothes online then.
People weren't selling much online, exactly. And so my parents, there was no way I could tell them anything. I could tell them this, so I just kind of didn't tell them. I thought that was the only logical option. So for the first 6 months of starting Showpo, I just actually pretended to go to work every day, get up early, put on my corporate suit. And like my mum worked in the city, so I had to get the bus into the city with my mum every day. And just like, oh God, just thinking, what the hell have I done with my life?
Oh my God. Okay. We know now that it did work out, but you're starting a business when you're $60,000 in debt. And like one of the questions that we get in our group all the time, it's like, how do I fund a business? I can't get like access to funding for women full stop is difficult, but particularly if you're in like consumer, it's super, super hard. So people are bootstrapping, but you started from a place of being in debt. How did you manage those like huge costs that come up with starting a business? Like you needed to buy product and you needed to like market the business. What were you doing that was like scrappy and that other people can kind of think about when they're trying to start something now?
So I think your two main costs with starting a business is product and marketing. And now when I look at a lot of small businesses, I see people spending a lot on websites and like all these other like anything else. It's unnecessary, and I think that's what kind of like dries up a business's funds. And so for me, it's all about marketing and inventory. So in terms of inventory, we bought stock on consignment. So we found a supplier that would sell to us on consignment, which meant that we only had to pay for it after it's sold. Now, this is really uncommon, but the only reason I even knew about this is because that's what we did with our first business, our pop-up store. So we had we all like, me and two business partners at the time put in $10,000 each. And so we actually lost $7,000 of that on a website, which with hindsight, I could have built myself, So in terms of stock, we didn't buy anything. We went around to the markets and we handed out business cards and we're like, hey, if you want to stock with us, we do it on consignment, 50% markup. And because we approached people at markets who were emerging designers, they were able to, I guess, they were desperate to kind of find stockists as we were desperate to find like stock. So it was a good way of getting people to be able to work on consignment. And then for Showpo, using that consignment model again, I think we got quite lucky finding a supplier that was happy to do that with us because we gave them exclusivity at the start as well. At the time, it was a brand that didn't have an online presence. So we were kind of doing that for them because they were not at the time realizing that opportunity for themselves. So that's how we got stock. And so it meant that every day I would have to go into the supplier's office and pick up stock, which is like a lot of effort. But then at that time, I had plenty of time. I didn't have money, so it made sense. And so that's what we did for inventory. And then in terms of marketing, we did everything on social media, which at the time was still really uncommon. And I thought it was a big hindrance that at the time I was like, oh, I knew I should have done a marketing degree as part of my commerce degree. So I was really kicking myself because I was like, this accounting and finance, it's useless. But then I realized not doing that marketing degree was so good because it would have constrained me to being stuck in this traditional way of thinking that, oh my God, I can't do PR, I can't do billboards, I can't do radio. There's no way to market myself because I had to get like strappy. Strappy or scrappy? Anyway, I had to like hustle and do it all on social media at the time. This is Facebook marketing. That's how long ago it was. There was just like, so yeah,
I heard you did like a competition on Facebook. Or like Face of Showpo. Like what was that? Did it work? How did that go?
So, I remember I was like one night I was on my couch, on my boyfriend's couch, because this is when I finally, as soon as he moved to Sydney from Brisbane, I just showed up at his house with all my stock. And this is how I stopped pretending to lie to my parents. And I'm like, surprise, we live together now. Anyway, so I was on his couch one night feeling really sad for myself, being like, what am I doing with my life? And I was watching America's Next Top Model as I was like, doing website uploads. And then they had this audience favorite segment for the first time where you're meant to vote on Facebook. And I was like, oh my God, this is brilliant, because this is back when there was Facebook Fangate. Like Fangate was still on, so you had to like and follow our page in order to engage with it. And so I basically put it out there that to our following, which is 3,000 people at the time, to enter a competition to be the face of Showpo or Showpony at the time. And then so these girls entered themselves, and then they would then ask their friends to go and vote for them. So girls went crazy. Like they went and started Facebook groups, Facebook pages, like Facebook events, tagging all of their friends. And so their friends would vote for them and follow the page, but then their friends entered themselves, and it just started having this and then reaching out to their friends. It had this amazing multiplier effect where we went from 3,000 to 20,000 followers in the space of a month, and it cost nothing. And at that time, back in 2012, 20,000 Facebook followers was like a lot. And so
you're an influencer. Yeah.
Exactly. Combined with like that many followers, having like a name like Showpony, which just because it's a common turn of phrase, it sounds more established. Having a landline number, having a bricks and mortar store, like it just made us seem so established as an early, an early e-commerce store. And so every little bit of that helped.
I heard you say that, a year into the business-ish, like things kind of plateaued, your business partner left, it was like all then on you. And I'm really curious about how you turned it around. I was listening to your, the podcast episode that you did about this, and it was like when the business partner left, the business was doing like $5,000 a month or something. And then the next month you nearly doubled it. And then within 2 years, you had your first $1 million month. Like, what were you doing?
What did you do?
Was it literally just like posting on Facebook? Like, what were you doing?
It was literally a bit of everything. And I almost wish that at the time, whenever you have a baseline, it's always good to almost like A/B test things so you know what works. Because obviously then you would have analytics, you would be able to look into the metrics to see what works, but at the time I didn't have that either. So I wish I could just say that I did one thing and then could see if it worked or not. But because it was that month I was like, oh my God, it was all me. I just literally did everything that I could. So I went and bought more stock. If you have more stock, you've got more stuff to sell. And then I started doing more social media posts. I started doing Google ads. And then because
you're doing them yourself? You're just like learning as you go, like on YouTube or something?
At this point, yes. I think it was just like Googling how to do it. And I don't even know if it's done well. And I remember at that point before, my business partner actually said to me, she was like, and I was like, let's do Google ads. And because the business wasn't going well, like I understand why she was saying that. She's like, let's just make more money before we spend more money. And that was kind of her attitude as she was leaving the business. And I was like, oh my God. And so anyway, we started doing Google ads. I removed the shipping charge. So it was free shipping. What do we do? We took I think just like having more content go out. But like quicker customer service, quicker social media responses. It was like literally, I think the problem was as the business, got to the stage where it's been like a year and a half with my business partner and it wasn't going well. And I felt like I was doing all the work. I was probably getting a bit bitter as well. So I wasn't necessarily doing that much. I was like, well, if you're not doing much, I'm not doing much. So I wasn't really doing that much, to be fair, at that $5,000 mark as well. And so we, at that point, also had, it's also like hard to put in like a quick story, but we had a store in the city, in like a little kiosk area, and that was doing quite well. So that was taking my attention. And, that being December, the store was doing really well. Probably making like $50K that month. Oh no, that's a lot. Yeah. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, it was doing like the store. Sorry, the city store was doing 50,000, and the online was doing 5,000. So it was just not taking that much of my attention.
Interesting. Okay. And now, like, when I look at Showpo, and I've been following you guys since you started. Like, I feel like I've been shopping the brand. I was working as a fashion editor when you were like getting all of this going.
Yeah.
So I've been watching what you've been doing and like wearing Showpo forever. And it's been really cool to see you like expand, like adding new categories. You did workwear. Like 7 years ago, you brought in inclusive sizing. You started doing like wedding. I know that you wore like a $300 wedding dress, right, from Showpo to your wedding, and it looked amazing. I am curious about like how you think about adding in and launching new categories. Like, what is it? Is it fueled by like data that's coming through? Is it like an intuitive thing for you as a CEO? Like, where do those insights and decisions come from?
It's a bit of both, because you ultimately want to chase like what you want to do, what your customers actually want, and you want to chase the money, right? So in terms of categories, like we started by doing like formal, because we had bought a few more formal pieces and they were selling really well, and also the margins are there because ultimately like you can charge a lot more for a formal dress, and so that was kind of our first foray into having like our own collection, and then in terms of then the next thing was workwear. I just remember that was more of a personal. This is still because it was in our infancy. You know, you're kind of more driven by doing things that you want, and you're trying to solve a problem that you see for yourself. And so that was when I was in terms like when I was working corporate. My entire. Do you remember Q, like the brand, like that?
Totally. Yeah.
That used to be my favorite store, but it was my entire paycheck because I was on like a $24,000 a year salary, and so I wanted to find like a solution for affordable workwear. And so that's probably our first big formal, like this is our collection, our range, new category that we've created. And then in terms of extending our sizes, it was just, I think it was a response to what customers were saying, were asking for. And it just seemed like a very obvious natural progression for the business. At the time we first said we should do this, it seemed nearly impossible because none of our suppliers wanted to do it, and we were such a small fish for any of our China suppliers, so we just didn't think it was going to be possible. But you know, it took a couple of years, but we got there.
When you say that you're like listening to what customers are saying, is that literally like what they're sending in customer, like in over emails? Is it Instagram comments? Like, where does that feedback come from, and how do you gather it?
Yeah, it's in terms of it's comments on social media, it's emails, and then it's also, I guess, you're looking at, you know, in a way you look at what the global trends are. I mean, at the time that we did extended sizes, it wasn't that clear. I feel like it's very clear the movement towards size inclusivity. At that time, that wasn't clear, and so you kind of have to like follow your gut on some things. But in terms of like listening to your customers, it's a hard one because sometimes you have to also be commercial, because if you try and please everyone, then you're pleasing no one. And then, you know, sometimes people ask for longer dresses, but then the bulk of our customers want short dresses, and then we make them a bit longer. How do you say, oh, we've made more modest styles, but you're not buying them? So
yeah,
and so it's like it's hard to find that balance sometimes. I think it depends on what you're trying to do. Like if you're not actually changing up what your production demands, you can test things. So it's all about, even at our stage, my biggest advice for any business is to like test and iterate. And I know that's not anything new, but I guess for me to say that it's something that we still have to do at this size. Like we don't know what we don't just go, oh, we know what we're doing, we're going to back this 100%. Like right. We're still testing and iterating, even at our size, at very small quantities, because you know we've actually made the mistake of, even at a bigger size, of just like banking too much on, you know, gut feel. I guess even without gut feel, even with data, like you can never be sure, I think.
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit more about like launching those collections because we spoke about like, marketing that got the business off the ground. And I don't know, I just feel like you are a really skilled like brand and marketing person. Obviously, you're like the CEO and the business brains behind everything, but I just feel like Showpo's brand is really strong. When you launch stuff, like people know about it. I see it everywhere. What does a launch look like now when you're releasing new product or you're launching a big new a new category? Like, are you doing launch events, influencer gifting, affiliates? Like, what's some things that like work right now in 2023?
Oh, that's a tough one. I feel like the environment for campaigns has really changed in the last few years. There's just so much noise that it's really hard to get airtime. And so I think in terms of campaigns, there's always a few things we'll do, like a big campaign, you'll do a few hype posts, but I've seen other brands doing very successful like hype marketing, and we don't do it that much because there's always so much going on that there's not enough room to build hype because you're actually already concurrently promoting another collection at the same time. It really depends. I do think I guess for my podcast, that was probably the most hype I've ever given something. And that actually did work like that. So maybe we'll reevaluate our hype process actually as I think more about this. But in terms of for our campaigns, we'll have different tiers, and then for each tier we'll have different what we spend on the marketing in terms of influencer gifting, influencer paid collabs, and in terms of whether we do an event or not. I personally love the idea of having little intimate dinners to celebrate the launch of the event because it's fun. I think it does in terms of reach. It's a great value proposition in terms of if you're looking at the paid part of it. We'll calculate it based on the cost per engagement. If that was a paid compared to a paid post, and I think it makes a lot more of an impact. But that's not to say I know that influencer marketing works, but I think for a startup, I'm not fully convinced on influencer marketing as a whole for everyone because of how expensive it is and how much it can drain people's money. It almost feels and I feel how influencer marketing now is almost how PR can be. I think it depends. If you have a great PR-able product, if there's lots to talk about, then you can, it's a great avenue. But if you I don't know. I think it depends on the product. I think it depends on finding the right influencer alignment. I just have seen so many small businesses waste money on influencer marketing and it's gone nowhere. Whereas, the other strategy is to actually pay for UGC and have a boosted paid strategy. But ultimately that does depend on the product. So
Jane, I feel like you're one of the few people that is saying this right now, that influencers is not the move. And I'm super interested, when you think about doing UGC and boosting it, for someone who hasn't done that before and who is entering this, what does that mean? What does that look like?
Oh, sorry. Yes. I'm oh my God, even when we're on Shark Tank, I'm they're stop using jargon. I always tell people off about using jargon and using abbreviations. And I'm oh my God, I didn't realize I was doing it myself. So sorry. So user generated content. So basically getting content creators, and now there's the creator economy is huge, and I think I love that. I love how TikTok, Instagram has allowed anyone to be an entrepreneur by creating content. You don't need to have a physical product. It's your service, it's your brand, it's your time that you can monetize. So I love that. Basically getting the right content creator to make content for your product, and then getting usage on that, and then boosting it as an ad. I feel when I buy random shit on the internet, it's from those Facebook ads that's oh, here's a problem you didn't know you have, and here's our product, how our product solves it. I think it's brilliant.
Okay, I love that. That's super insightful on like how you're thinking about influencers now, because I totally think you're right. I was literally having a conversation with somebody last night at one of our events about this, and she has a really expensive like jewelry brand, and she was kind of like, I don't know, like if I should work with influencers and how I should do it and whether it's worthwhile. And I was like, you just need to be like, if you're going to do it through a gifting campaign and not through paid, like it's so hard to get anyone to post about you. And you just have to be so like personalized and targeted about what you're doing and who you're gifting. There was this really cool do you know a Twirl collective that like makeup case brand?
Case brand, yeah.
Yeah, so Michelle lives in New York now. She's an Aussie, and she did this campaign to gift Sofa Dofa, I think is her name, the big TikToker.
Yeah.
And she saw that she was going away on like this big European holiday, and like she loves her cat, and her cat was going to be left behind. And Michelle literally like had her cases hand painted with this like Italian inspired lemon print. She filled it with this really fancy cat food that was like for the cat. She sent the gift to Soph's mum and to her, so that it was like, you know, pulling at the heartstrings of that like relationship. They curated a playlist for like the cat to listen to while Soph was traveling. Like she went so all out, and then they got some free coverage based on that gifting, because like they went so instead of gifting a whole lot of people, they just like picked one person and just like really went in on it. And I thought that was such an interesting way to think about it, because the influencer marketing thing is really hard.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so smart, because, you know, a post with Sofa Dofa would not be cheap. So that's brilliant.
Totally.
I do have to say the best influencer content creator for any business is yourself. So I feel like if you don't have the money and you don't want to take a risk with even content creators, just turn yourself into a content creator for your own business.
Okay, so this literally feeds perfectly into what I want to talk to you next, which is you're like a superstar content creator for this business. I don't know how you're like the CEO and literally this like face of this business as well. You look like you're having so much fun all the time, which I feel like is really on brand for like the actual product that you sell. Also, I feel like that's just your vibe and who you are. But you are really forward facing. You're going on Shark Tank as a judge. And then you also say that you have imposter syndrome as well. And we always have people in the community being like, I don't want to go on TikTok. Like, I don't want to be the face of the business. I'm just going to like get other people to do it. And I'm like, dude, you're missing such a big opportunity and you don't have budget to pay people to do it. So you just need to get over it. How did you get over it?
So, okay, well, maybe I'm like, I don't know. So maybe I'm a bit of a weirdo, because back in high school, me and one of my friends used to like make skits and then just record it on a camcorder for ourselves. They were like so bad. It was almost like, Scary Movie, or like, those like spoof kind of stuff, or like make spoofs of like reality TV shows and like movies. And anyway, and then it's not for anyone to see, because it would be way too embarrassing. Like, I'm so glad those were before the days of YouTube, and we never went, let's just see if anyone likes it. No, we just kept it on camcorder. Oh my God, I
think this about everything.
But
I'm like so glad I grew up before this. Yeah.
So I genuinely actually enjoy content creation. I definitely get like, I definitely get nervous about putting stuff on the internet. Like I get, even like, if I'm like upstairs making a video and my husband, I can hear him coming up the stairs, I'll take the tripod and I'll go shove it in like the walk-in wardrobe, because I'm like, oh, I'm not doing anything. It's like as if I'm having an affair, and I'm like, go hide. Like, I'm so nervous about content creation, but like when I do it with people, I really kind of enjoy it. It's like a creative outlet. But like it took me a while to properly get on TikTok. There was a while, I think for me, I enjoy it as more of a social group activity. So I feel like doing it at work, I like it. But then during COVID, which would have been the time to actually do that content, when I was in lockdown, I was too scared and too nervous, and I was too self-critical, because you're just like, and so I didn't actually do that much then. So that was a big opportunity miss. But okay, in terms of doing content and being the face of the brand in a way, I originally also tried to do PR for Showpo back in the early days. And because we were not designing our own products, I'm not a designer. We were purely retailing now, and now we're designing most of our own clothes. But because we were just a retailer at the start, it was nothing PRable. right? And so that's when I say people shouldn't just get a PR agency and just be like, go talk about this product that has no story. So then, anyways, and also I couldn't afford to actually hire an agency, so I was trying to do my PR. Nothing was working, and then I found that people were interested in me talking as an entrepreneur. And this is in the early 2012s, 2013. I found that me as a female Asian entrepreneur, it gave me a point of difference. And so I'm like, fuck man, I'm going to use being a minority. Of course. It's going to work,
Totally.
so it was great. So I was able to get a lot of PR. And then it just kind of, why wouldn't I take the PR opportunity? So that's kind of how it wasn't a strategy. I've launched a business course at the start of the year, and I was writing the PR strategy. I'm like, make yourself the brand, go do this, go do speaking, blah, blah, blah. This is how you can, leverage from one thing to the other and build a name for yourself and your brand. But then at the time I was doing it, it wasn't at all a strategy because you didn't really know what you were doing. It was just, as a startup, you're just trying to chasing the money, you're chasing PR, you're just chasing whatever opportunity you could possibly get for the business. And so which is actually amazing now that by doing so, that's why, there's lots of amazing businesses out there, but for Shark Tank, the production company, to have found me, it's because I have put myself, and if you look at the other judges, they put themselves out there too. You see Sabri and Davey all over social media. You see Dr. Kat Wallace, she is, she's on 60 Minutes Q&A. She's on a lot more formal programs, and she's in the AFR. But anyway, she puts herself out there, right? You never know what door things it will open for you, but I think you just have to put yourself out there.
Yeah, and you've been creating content, putting yourself out there for years, and then this big opportunity came from it. So I think that's the thing as well. Some people well, I do think you can post for a few months and get disheartened, and it's a brand and a personal brand is built by telling your story over and over again. How many times have you told the story about how you started and how you didn't tell your parents? You must have told that story literally thousands of times, right?
Yeah. It's
it's not just you make one TikTok and then all of a sudden a personal brand is made. This has been something that you've been saying again and again for years.
Yeah, I feel like my team are the suit, the bus. Yes, we know.
Okay. I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about hiring, firing, managing a team. You are someone who has been able to really effectively scale something, and obviously a big part of that is that you have found a way to zoom out of the business, and this is something that I think a lot of people have. You get to a certain point and it's you don't know how to bring the right people in and to remove yourself from the right tasks so that you can focus on growth and other people can focus on the operating stuff of the actual business. What advice do you have for people around this? What's worked for you? What hasn't?
Yeah.
What have you messed up?
I think the first step to scaling any business is to start hiring and then put in systems and processes so that you can work on the business instead of in the business. And, it's funny. I feel I think for so many people, it's so easy to get caught up in trying to do everything and trying to be a perfectionist for it. It's interesting. I was actually thinking about this exact thing last night because I kind of treat my new podcast as a startup because it's kind of like this new little venture. And I realized that I was spending so much time in it. I was up until midnight last night, just doing some of the editing. And then I was no, this can be really...
Why are you editing your own podcast?
No, I was choosing listening to it and then marking up the transcript or I was trying to and I've been editing my own snippets because I'm get rid of that silence. And then last night I realized, oh my God, it's not worth it. I realized I'm not going to be able to do this long term. I'm going to burn myself out, and then I'm not going to be able to spend more time doing other parts. There's other parts of the podcast I could be doing, in terms of finding finding new speakers, thinking about new questions, thinking about ways to evolve the podcast, marketing. If I'm just working on the the working on the day-to-day tasks, and I just need to let go. And like, actually, yes, if you didn't remove that pause or whatever, or you remove that awkward word, it's actually not going to make a difference. Like, you're not actually like, it's not actually worth it for what you're missing out on. And so it's literally what kind of happened at the start of the business. I was literally doing everything. When my business partner left, I was managing the stores, which meant like replenishing the stock, managing the team, and then, you know, everything that comes with like managing a store. And then like in terms of the online business, taking e-com photos, like cropping, uploading. I think I had one virtual assistant at the time, so she was able to help. But then I was doing social media, customer service. I was physically driving to pick up the stock still, doing all the picking the orders, writing thank you notes, packing them and taking them to the post office. It was literally a full, like, I would just get up and get into work mode and go straight into, and just working these crazy hours, which I know like a lot of like startups do, but then that would have limited the business to a certain amount of growth. And me thinking like, how am I going to possibly have the time to train someone when I'm so busy doing this? And what if they make a mistake? They're not going to be able to do this as well as I can. And I remember at the time that, you know, minimum wage at the time was maybe like $23, I don't know. But then I remember I was on $5.70 when I started at McDonald's, which I was like 14, and you know, it's stupid.
I was on $6.80. That was my first job. Yeah.
But you're just like thinking that, oh my God, it's so expensive. I should just do this myself. And because I'd been so poor for so long in the lead up to this, anyway, it wasn't, this sounds so, you're not going to believe this, it's so silly, but when business wasn't going well, but I had just started making some money from the store, I booked a trip to go to Miami for Ultra Music Festival in March. So remember that January was when we started doing 9,000 a month. Feb, we were now doing 40. So I'm looking at the next month thinking, oh my God, like I've just started having momentum. It would be so reckless to go on this trip. But I also have really bad FOMO, and I can be really convinced. Like, I'm always like, if someone goes, have one more drink, I will be like, yeah, I'll have one more drink. I'm like the last person at every party. So I can be really, I have a really, what is it, rubbery elbow?
Rubber arm, yeah.
Rubber arm, okay. So
just the elbow for you.
Rubber arm. Okay. And so I swear I've said rubber elbow so many times, and people would have been like, okay, good for you. Anyway, so I went on this trip. I got one of the girls that was working at the store to come and work on the online business. So this is my first, the first employee for Showpo, the online store. Showpo, the online store. Anyway, this is still in my parents' garage. So she would have to go through my parents' house downstairs to the garage to work. And then that month, we did $75,000 that month. The business almost doubled. Right. That month I was away for like a week and a half. So I went to Miami, I went to New York, had the best time, and then came back, nothing was broken. And obviously she made a couple of mistakes, but the business still kept growing. And then I actually found out that she was billing me and so that's the thing. This is why you don't want to take these risks, because you're like, oh, this person's going to make mistakes. They're going to they could, if you hire someone, they might do something dishonest. Well, she did. She was billing me till 9 p.m. every night and just saying like, oh, there was a lot of work, blah, blah, blah. But then I could see she was basically just doing dispatch and emails. But then the last email was 3 p.m. in the sent box. Like an idiot. Anyway, and then you're not going to be packing orders after, say, 5 p.m. or 5:30, right? So I'm like, what were you doing? And I know that she had bad internet at home. So she was just doing her uni assignment at my house in my parents' garage. And then my mom is like, and I just couldn't believe, like, this is like, my mum was making her dinner because she was working overtime. So she was there doing her uni assignment, charging me for it.
Getting
and my
free
mum
food.
was making her dinner. Like, what?
So how do you get over this experience and then decide, actually, you know what? I need to keep growing the team. That's the move. And not just think, oh shit, I'm never going to trust anyone with my business baby again.
Yeah, oh God, what was my mindset back then? I think I was just like, oh my God, $140,000. I could only see money at that time. I was so happy. And I was just had this amazing trip. So I was pretty like, I was pretty happy with myself. So I came back and then and the fact that like I had this person now working, she obviously, I got rid of her, but then I brought someone else in and we started growing the team. The next month, $140,000 in sales, you know, like it was just being able to then work on the business, doing way more things. I think we started like hiring like a ad agency by that at some point around then. So, you know, I think there's all the no's for why you shouldn't do something, but ultimately you have to look at the opportunity cost of like doing it yourself. You know, and I think, of course, there's going to be mistakes that's made. Like, it's not going to be a perfect execution of scaling the business. Of course it's not. That's the whole point. You're meant to just overcome these challenges. And had you not learned your mistake at an earlier stage, when the business is bigger, you're going to make it again because you are, like human nature, you are just the type of person you are. You're bound to make that mistake until you learn. So you're better off making it when the business is smaller, when you put less on the line at that point.
That's such a good piece of advice. Jane, I could like talk to you about this all day, but we're nearly at time. And so I've got one more question for you. And that is, it's for a resource and like just something that's been helping you. You know, obviously you've had to up level as a leader, as an entrepreneur, the business has been growing. Like what resource has helped you do that you think other people should check out?
Well, I might use this to plug my business course, thelaziceo.com. So I do have a business course for growing and starting and growing an online business. And it's like just all about like sourcing product marketing and then talking through the stages of growth that I had. It's just a bunch of videos. So if you want to get sick of seeing my face, but in terms of like, I don't want to like plug it too much. So I'll talk about some of the things that I really enjoyed.
We'll put a link in the show notes as well for people who want to check it out.
Thank you. And then in terms of like what's really helped me, I think I feed off other people. So at the time I joined some like business course thing, which I don't think necessarily taught me that much because with hindsight, it probably would have helped someone who had to make B2B sales. So it's a lot of like sales skills, not a lot in terms of like online and digital marketing, but being in part of that environment really helped. Having people to ask questions and like just being surrounded, because this is again back in like 2012, 2013. None of my friends had businesses. Everyone worked corporate. I felt very like I had no one to talk to about things, and you know, all the ideas were just coming from me, but being part of like surrounded by other business people really helped. But I think, okay, that's not great advice because I'm sure people are surrounded by other entrepreneurs these days. Oh, Like-Minded Bitches Drinking Wine, my business group.
Yeah.
With 170,000 members.
I do think community, I mean, like this is something that a lot of founders on the show recommend, and it's because it is important. Like you need to find other people who are doing this. You can't just be like hanging out with the people that you went to high school with who are not going in the same place that you want to go. Like they can be your best mates too, but like you need to find people that are like your version of like colleagues if you're working on a business by yourself who can like help you with that. And that's why, communities like-minded bitches drinking wine. We've got a group chat as well. And like, find the people.
Yes, exactly. Love that.
Jane, thank you so much for coming on the show. Like your story is a wild one. I feel like I could talk to you all day, every day. Where can people find you? Where can they find all of your resources?
Yes, so you can find me on Insta, The Lazy CEO, and there's my podcast, The Lazy CEO Podcast. Not the one with the man, the one with the girl. There's like a guy with the exact same name as my podcast. But anyway, so pick the one with me.
You were the Lazy CEO first on Instagram.
The OG, that's right. And then, of course, come check out Showpo for all your fashion needs.
Love it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Quick shout out to all of our Business Bestie subscribers. If you are loving this show and you are building a consumer, CPG or e-commerce business, or you're about to build one, this membership will give you access to the people, experiences, and the tools that you really need to build your dream business. Head to femalefounderworld.com/subscriber for more.